Democrats are starting to publicly second-guess their stance on transgender rights and DEI programs, positions that they've long embraced on principle. Recent remarks by California Governor Gavin Newsom, someone who formerly supported the LGBTQ community, stunned many progressives as betrayal. Some Democrats quietly agree with Newsom, while others say empathetically that the party should support transgender people. And others now simply feel targeted by Trump's administration. In today's video, we will break down everything and cover all of the key points, so make sure you watch to the end so that you don't miss anything. On March 6th, Gavin Newsom premiered his brand new podcast with starring guest Charlie Kirk. As you should know, Charlie Kirk is a far-right Republican who specializes in debates, and by just bringing Charlie Kirk on his show alone was highly criticized. But it gets a lot worse than this. Let's start with this first clip of Newsom actually admitting that he agrees that it is unfair to allow transgender athletes to participate in female college and youth sports. Watch this.
Should come out and be like, you know what? The young man who's about to win the state championship in the long jump in female sports,
right,
that shouldn't happen. You as the governor should step out and say no.
No, and I appreciate.
But like, would you do something like that? Would you say no men in female sports?
Well, I think it's an issue of fairness. I completely agree with you on that. So that's easy to call out, the unfairness of that. There's also a humility and a grace, that these poor people are more likely to commit suicide, have anxiety and depression. And the way that people talk down to vulnerable communities is an issue that I have a hard time with as well. So both things I can hold in my hand. How can we address this issue with the kind of decency that I think, is inherent in you, but not always expressed?
So in that clip, Charlie Kirk, he's confronting him with that question. How do you feel about transgender athletes competing against females? He says he understands that it is unfair and he can agree with that and he doesn't want that, but that he also has sympathy for trans communities. Personally, for me, I'm only able to understand that a little bit. I don't understand how you can hold those both in your hands when you just said from yourself that can cause people to be suicidal and have depression and anxiety because they're losing to men. They're working super hard and it's not paying off. Yes, you can care about the trans community, but it still should be separate and not affecting the other communities who will be at fault because they're taking over. The most shocking part of it all is that this is still Gavin Newsom, the governor who beforehand fully supported, with so much power behind him that he supported them. But to still be who's coming out and saying something against it, it kind of shows where the Democrats are or what they possibly could be realizing was the truth all along. Now, watch this clip of Charlie Kirk fact-checking Newsom about some of Newsom's own laws.
Law where school districts can't even tell parents if their kids are trans.
Not true.
Okay,
Factually untrue.
Okay, then.
No, they can. They just can't get fired for not doing that. And it wasn't just trans.
Fired for not.
The law was explicit, said you can't be fired for not snitching on a kid, not just for being trans, for being gay.
A teacher, of course, should be fired if you don't notify a parent of what's happening to their kid. Of course they should be terminated for that.
If they don't look around and say in the recess, there were two boys, why didn't you see that? You're fired. You should have said something because they're talking about
two different things. That is an over extreme example. What we're talking about.
No, but the extreme example, this was a solution in search of a
problem. What we're talking about is if, which happens a lot, unfortunately, is if a young girl says that, hey, I want to transition, and the teacher accommodates and affirms it, and the parent doesn't even know. I have met parents like that in the state.
I heard Trump, and then they come back and they're a boy or something. There's so much extreme rhetoric.
I will say, and we don't have to, we don't have to wrestle too much on this topic. But you guys will lose on these.
Now, in that video, Kirk is saying you passed a law and signed it that parents can't be notified from teachers. Teachers don't have to say anything. And Newsom said that's not what it is. It's basically saying that the teachers can't be fired for not telling the parents. And Kirk responds back, yes, they should be. And then they go into a bickering of over extreme and under extreme situations. When people go up to teachers and tell them how they want to be either gender, and the teacher helps them. The teacher might even help them learn how to research it, what process they need to go to so they can transition. That is not something the teacher should be doing. And that is not up to the teacher to be able to make that decision. Newsom also went on to say that he agreed that the most politically destructive attack ads from Trump's campaign featured Kamala Harris and her support for funding gender transition related medical care for detained immigrants and federal prisoners using taxpayer money. And personally, just hearing that kind of pisses me off. It's not even like the money, taxpayer money, is being used on Americans, and not even transgender Americans. It's being used on transgender immigrants and federal prisoners and detainees. Those aren't the people that money should be going to yet for that. If anything, if you want to use it on the trans community, let it be the free working trans Americans, not the trans immigrants and federal prisoners. Also in the episode, Gavin Newsom admitted that his son is a fan of Charlie Kirk, and that he would even possibly show up and go to one of Charlie Kirk's political events. Watch this.
Trying to put my son to bed. He's like, no, Dad, what time? What time's Charlie gonna be here? What time? And I'm like, dude, you're in school tomorrow. He's 13. He's like, no. This morning, wakes up at 6 something. He's like, I'm coming. I'm like, he literally would not leave the house.
Did you let him take off school?
No, he did. Of course not. He's not here for a good reason. But the point is,
you canceled school for like 2 years. One day.
The point is the point, which is you are making a damn dent.
Thank you. I'm kidding.
When you go to these college campuses, I love watching your TikTok, which is next level. And clearly, that's expressed by my 13-year-old son.
I want to meet this guy.
Yeah, I actually.
He's coming to a Turning Point event this summer, Tampa, Florida, Student Action Summit.
I actually am by the way, if
you should be concerned.
But so let me say, here is why I'm concerned, because you have expressed that I should be concerned as a Democrat, that we're getting clobbered.
Okay. Yes.
That you figured something out.
It's not me. The president first deserves the credit.
But why? No, hold on. You were at this before Trump was Trump.
I know, but
he was a Democrat back in 2011 and 12.
The president deserves huge credit. And I just have to say that as an obligatory thing, because without him, our movement would be small. And you can appreciate that in politics. You have to appreciate the person who is the catalyst.
As we just watched in that clip, Gavin Newsom's own son, Democratic governor's own son, is a fan of Charlie Kirk. His son was showing true excitement that he wanted to meet him. And Charlie Kirk himself even said, you can't give me all the credit. Because he can admit, Gavin Newsom admitted that Democrats are getting destroyed. He said they're getting clobbered. That means the Republicans or Charlie Kirk himself have figured something out. And he gave the credit to Trump. And I will say, I do understand that Gavin Newsom's idea of bringing Kirk onto the show was to try to get an understanding of both sides. But he still needs to defend his own party. But despite that, I will say I do respect him for being upfront and truthful about what he believes. Lastly, I want to show you guys this tweet. I'm sure you heard of the rumors that Gavin Newsom potentially might run for president. The tweet reads, "This is the far left. Gavin Newsom sat down to have a conversation with Charlie Kirk and now he's canceled. Imagine having a convo." There's a picture that says from someone else, "I'll be voting for a candidate in the Democratic primary who doesn't promote Charlie Kirk." And to connect this back to the point I just said, I understand him bringing on Charlie Kirk onto the show to get both sides. But at this current time, it's very tense, and this is a very controversial and sensitive topic to bring him onto the show. Both sides are really into themselves right now, so any type of understanding or peacemaking that could happen, it's not on the table. And we can clearly see that from this tweet. He had one conversation with him, and who knows what will happen if he's canceled or not. But for the most part, this was a successful podcast conversation. There was no yelling. There was no disrespect going on. They were both listening to each other and answering each other. They let each other say their questions and statements, and they talked it out like civil people. So let me know how you feel about Gavin Newsom. How do you feel all the statements he said coming from a Democrat is going to melt well into the public? Do you think he will have a lot of problems coming towards him because of this? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time on KW Lawholic.